Why has education always been such a central battleground in the struggle for justice and equality? The answer is simple. Education is the key to solidarity. Knowledge is power. And when people are educated about their shared struggles and the history of unity, they become harder to divide. They begin to recognize that they are not isolated in their experiences, but connected by a common cause. This is precisely why the powerful elite have historically sought to control education. They understand knowledge is the greatest threat to their monopoly on power. Let's explore how education has been used as a tool of control and division through history. During Reconstruction, after the Civil War, Black Americans were finally granted some of the rights and freedoms that had been denied them during slavery. But the elite quickly realized that one of the greatest threats to their control was the education of the newly freed Black population. The goal wasn't just to keep Black people uneducated, it was to ensure that everyone, regardless of race, remained ignorant to the potential power of unity. Educating Black Americans would have fostered solidarity not just among Black communities, but also between Black and white working class people, something that the ruling class could not allow. In the South, laws were passed to restrict Black education. And not just any education, but the education that could empower them to understand their history and their rights. Literacy tests, segregation schools, and violent repression were all tools used to keep Black Americans from learning the truth about their power. The fear of education was profound. If Black people learned about their history of resistance and unity, they might be inspired to reclaim that power. In the 20th century, the elite went a step further, making education a tool for perpetuating racial segregation. Jim Crow laws enforced separate schools for white and Black children, and in many cases the quality of education for Black children was deliberately kept inferior to that of the white children. Schools for Black children were often underfunded, or overcrowded classrooms, or outdated materials, and poorly paid teachers. By keeping Black and white children separated, the ruling elite ensured that the divide between the races would continue, not just in terms of access or resources, but in terms of mindsets, racial animosity, ignorance of each other's struggles, and a sense of superiority were carefully cultivated in these segregated institutions. White children were taught that their success was due to their innate superiority, while Black children were taught that they were inferior and unworthy of the same opportunities. This educational divide didn't just affect knowledge, it shaped worldviews that kept people apart. Furthermore, segregation in schools went beyond the physical wall of the classroom. It was also permeated the curriculum. Textbooks were rewritten to downplay or outright ignore the reality of racial oppression and the power of solidarity among marginalized groups. This left children with a distorted understanding of history, one that kept them unaware of the long legacy of resistance movements and had challenged the elite. In the 21st century, the corporate elite have found new ways to manipulate the education system. Today, wealthy corporations are deeply entrenched in the funding and shaping of educational policies, from private schools to charter schools, to the curriculum choices in public education. These corporations push a narrative that centers on individual success rather than collective action. In modern education, personal ambition has become the driving force, often at the expense of community involvement. Students are taught to compete with one another for limited resources, whether it's college admissions, jobs, or business opportunities, rather than to organize collectively for the betterment of society. The focus on individual achievement aligns with the elite's desire to keep people isolated in their personal struggles rather than fostering solidarity. In fact, many of today's standardized tests and curriculum frameworks encourage students to think of themselves as individual units rather than a part of a large interconnected community. Schools push for students to focus on grades, personal success, and prestige, but rarely on the systems of inequality that keep the elite in power. The idea that collective action through union organization, activism, or community organizing could be a means of achieving social change is often sidelined and ignored. The results of this long history of controlling education is clear. The elite have worked timelessly and tirelessly to divide us by limiting our understanding of each other's struggles and by keeping us ignorant of our shared interests. When people, especially marginalized communities, do not recognize that their fight for justice is part of a larger collective struggle, they are more easily manipulated and kept weak. This lack of education about the power of unity allows the elite to maintain their control. But when people are educated about their history, about the movements of resistance that have come before them, about the times when black and white workers united, about the power of cross-racial solidarity, they can begin to see through the walls that the elite have constructed. They can begin to recognize that their struggles are not isolated incidents, but part of a larger interconnected fight for freedom and justice. The elite fear education because it is the gateway to solidarity. When people learn about their shared history and collective potential, they stop being fragmented. They become an unstoppable force for change. That is why education has always been a battleground, and it will continue to be one. The fight for knowledge is the fight for power, and it is one that we must reclaim if we are going to dismantle the systems that have kept us divided for centuries. So what does this mean for the future? The divide and conquer tactics of the wealthy elite, once so effective in keeping marginalized communities fragmented and powerless, are becoming less effective. In the face of an emerging tide of unity across the globe, people of different races, genders, and classes are beginning to recognize the immense power of solidarity, the force that has always been the greatest threat to the entrenched systems of power. Today, more and more people are coming together to fight for common causes. From the Fight for 15 campaign, demanding a livable minimum wage, to immigrant right marches pushing for humane policies, to the environmental justice movements fighting for a sustainable future, we are witnessing an unprecedented rise in cross-racial, cross-class, cross-cultural alliances. People are increasingly realizing that their struggles are interconnected and that their collective action can create lasting change.